Government is too large today, but the burden of federal spending will become even larger in the coming decades. We need to restrain the growth of government and protect America's economy and society from some of the problems currently plaguing Europe. I'm Blaine Bennett of Students for Liberty. Thanks for watching this Economics 101 video from the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. There are 4 main reasons to shrink the size and scope of the federal government. Number 1, excessive government spending crowds out private growth. Every dollar spent by government necessarily diverts a dollar from the productive sector of the economy. This reduces economic efficiency and undermines competitiveness. Economists would say the same thing in a slightly different way, explaining that government spending distorts the allocation of resources by steering capital and labor to comparatively unproductive uses. You may have heard stories about stimulus spending being used for research on robotic bees or for building the infamous Turtle Tunnel. However, it's important to understand that not all forms of government spending are created equal. Some people argue that certain types of spending, such as outlays for a well-functioning and honest court system, promote better economic performance. Public goods, however, are a relatively small part of the federal budget. Most government outlays are for purposes that unambiguously harm economic performance by misallocating resources without any offsetting benefits. What I mean by this is that much of the federal budget is used for entitlements and redistribution, which public finance economists refer to as transfer spending and consumption spending. These are the types of outlays that have crippled so many European economies and brought nations such as Greece and Portugal to the brink of bankruptcy. Number 2, excessive government spending requires destructive taxation. An onerous tax system is an inevitable consequence of a bloated public sector. Simply stated, if government is small, it's very difficult to have a bad tax system. But if the government is large, it's very difficult to have a good tax system. Even 100 years ago, governments were able to finance their economic output based on a very small tax burden. The imposition of income taxes, however, enabled politicians to engage in vote-buying behavior. This opened the door for widespread and pervasive entitlement and redistribution programs. Personal and corporate income taxes soon were augmented by payroll taxes. But even these revenue sources generally were not sufficient, and the political class in most nations also imposed a form of national sales tax known as the value-added tax. Number 3, excessive government spending causes deficits and debt. Notwithstanding the huge increase in the tax burden, politicians routinely spend more money than they collect from taxpayers. This means that they have to finance a portion of their spending by borrowing from private credit markets. If deficits and debt are growing faster than overall economic output, this creates an ominous situation of ever-rising interest payments. If we lived like this, we'd be broke. So why is the government different? Well, it isn't. Sometime soon, the spiral of debt, deficits, and interest payments will become unsustainable. Number 4, excessive federal spending violates the Constitution. The current size and scope of the federal government is inconsistent with the system created by America's founding fathers. The Constitution lists the allowable powers of the federal government, and most of the spending by the federal government is inconsistent with those enumerated powers. The founders thought to include these limitations in the Constitution because they believed local knowledge was best when creating laws. When welfare reform finally happened in the mid-1990s, the positive results were largely the result of shifting authority and responsibility to the state level. Lawmakers in the various states could try different approaches, and it was then possible for other states to copy these policies and engage in further experimentation to see what worked best. This principle could be applied to a wide array of public policies. Of course, there are many areas where it does not make sense for there to be any government involvement, such as housing, energy, and agriculture. As a society, we have been able to accomplish so much, all in spite of the ever-increasing government. I hope that you will join me in fighting for the little guy, the individual, against a quite formidable opponent. I'm Blaine Bennett of Students for Liberty. Please share this Center for Freedom and Prosperity video and take part in the fight for freedom.